Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a fiery and honestly fascinating new report called the 833% Lie. We're going to impartially break down its main argument, that a recent, highly publicized White House pledge is, well, totally failing to protect everyday utility ratepayers. According to the authors, everyday households, meaning us, are looking at massive electricity cost spikes, and it's being directly driven by the explosive growth of AI data centers. It's this massive collision of high-tech ambitions, completely outdated policy, and ultimately, your monthly electric bill. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's kick things off with a pretty staggering statistic presented right at the very beginning of the source material. 833%. Yeah, it's a massive number, and the report literally anchors its entire thesis around it. The authors make it clear that this isn't some abstract projection for 10 years down the road. This is a hyper-specific, documented increase that has already happened in our regional energy markets as of early 2026. So the authors use this 833% metric to pose a really critical question. Why exactly is this specific percentage going to fundamentally alter what everyday households and small businesses pay for electricity over the next 2 years? Well, to really understand their argument, we have to look under the hood at the mechanics of the energy grid itself and see how the sudden arrival of these massive artificial intelligence data centers is literally shocking the system.
Section 1, the 83% spike.
To make sense of this massive spike, the report points us straight to the PJM interconnection. If you're not familiar, PJM is the giant grid operator responsible for keeping the lights on for 65 million Americans across 13 states and D.C. To make sure they always have enough power on standby, PJM runs something called a capacity auction. And the data from these auctions is wild. Capacity prices skyrocketed from about $29 for the 2024 to 2025 delivery year, all the way up to an unprecedented $329 by the early 2026 auction. The report argues that when grid demand spikes dramatically, but new power supply just doesn't keep up, the auction prices have to clear at these punishingly high rates just to attract new power generators. So you're probably wondering who is actually responsible for this? Well, the report cites PJM's own internal watchdog, the Independent Market Monitor. They calculated that a massive 63% of this price spike is directly attributable to AI data center load growth. Forecasted demand in that region jumped by over 70%, driven almost entirely by new AI training and inference facilities. And the kicker? Under the current rules, that massive market cost doesn't just fall on the tech companies. Nope, it gets spread out to everyone. Moving on to Section 2. The Ratepayer Protection Pledge. Back in March 2026, 7 major tech executives gathered in the East Room of the White House to sign what was called the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. It was highly publicized as this historic commitment that their data centers would not raise bills for ordinary American families. But the authors of the report use a pretty brilliant metaphor to contrast this. They call it the public relations photograph versus the actual receipt. The photograph is that solemn signing ceremony where the CEOs pledge to absorb their costs. The receipt, however, is what actually lands in your mailbox, a utility bill that just keeps steadily passing massive regional transmission and capacity costs directly onto you, regardless of that pledge. The report really digs into the actual text of that pledge to explain why there's such a huge disconnect. The pledge states that these companies will build, bring, or buy power for their data centers. But according to the report's analysis, it's actually a clever bit of accounting gymnastics. By saying they will bring or buy, these companies can simply claim to purchase power from existing energy sources, like a nuclear or solar plant that's already running, rather than being forced to actually construct brand new physical power generation to offset their massive new demand. Section 3, the 1994 FERC Lecall. So the real reason that White House pledge kind of lacks teeth comes down to a 32-year-old federal rule. The authors point to the 1994 rolled-in pricing rule from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. I mean, just think about that for a second. A rule written back when dial-up internet was considered a luxury is now dictating the economics of the AI boom. This rule mandates that when a new user requires transmission upgrades, the cost is socialized across all users of the grid. So legally, those multi-billion-dollar long-haul transmission lines built specifically for new data centers, they get paid for by all 65 million ratepayers, which effectively overrides whatever voluntary pledge those tech CEOs signed. And to impartially back up this claim, the report brings in Ari Pesco, the director of the Harvard Electricity Law Initiative, providing some neutral third-party legal validation of this structural loophole. As the report points out, the pledge might say hyperscalers, those massive tech companies building the AI facilities, will pay for localized distribution, but federal law explicitly mandates that the bigger regional transmission costs get socialized. And in a battle between a voluntary press release and a binding federal rule, well, the federal rule is going to win every single time.
Section 4. Hidden Utility Contracts.
Beyond the federal rules, the report introduces a whole other layer of complexity. It turns out data centers are extracting even more advantages through confidential behind-the-meter side agreements. These are special contracts negotiated privately with regulated utility companies, and they're filed completely under seal. According to leaked documents and state rulings cited in the text, these hidden subsidies include getting below-cost rates per kilowatt hour, bypassing standard interconnection queues, and even getting exemptions from peak demand rules. When the grid is stressed, normal industrial customers have to power down. But these contracts often exempt data centers. That forces the utility to buy super expensive emergency power on the open market, which, you guessed it, ordinary ratepayers end up subsidizing.
So, what does this actually cost us? The source material provides some pretty alarming calculations from the Union of Concerned Scientists showing exactly how these cascading factors hit the wallet. They calculate a staggering $9.3 billion total cost shift onto non-data center customers in the PJM region. For an average household, that translates to about $344 extra a year. But it gets worse. If you happen to live in a highly concentrated data center zone, like Dominion's territory down in Virginia, the report projects your utility bills will rise by roughly $70 extra per month by 2028.
Section 5. The state-level pushback. But the authors note that the real fight isn't actually happening in Washington, D.C. It's happening at the local level. Across the country, states are rapidly pushing back. Ohio recently signed a bill charging data centers directly for capacity. Utah went ahead and barred these pass-through costs entirely. Virginia is enacting a completely separate data center rate class. The authors argue that the fact that 27 different states are currently advancing rapid legislative action to protect ratepayers is the absolute clearest empirical proof we have that the voluntary federal pledge just isn't protecting anyone.
Section 6. What ratepayers can do. The authors don't just lay out the problem, though. They provide a specific, highly actionable battle plan for ordinary ratepayers, small business owners, and taxpayers who want to halt this multi-billion-dollar cost shift. Step 1, file a public intervention with your state utility commission during rate cases. The report actually notes a major victory in Indiana happened exactly because folks did this. Step 2, contact your state legislator to ensure they are joining the states passing cost allocation laws. And Step 3, demand transparency so these massive utility tariffs are no longer hidden under seal. They emphasize the public engagement over the next 18 months is absolutely essential.
We end with the ultimate provocative question posed by the source material. The pledge exists, the 833% spike exists, and the state-level pushback is clearly in motion. The report leaves it entirely up to the public to determine the outcome. Will this massive infrastructure transfer become a permanent feature of American electricity pricing, or is it a transitional anomaly that we successfully correct? It's a truly fascinating look at the hidden costs of our latest technological leap forward, and it definitely leaves us all with something crucial to think about the next time we open up that monthly utility bill.